The House will have under consideration Senate Joint Resolution number 102. Good gentleman from District 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to dispense with further reading of Senate Joint Resolution 102.
You've heard the request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman is recognized to open the debate on the resolution.
Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask unanimous consent to refer to other pending legislation.
There be no objection. The gentleman may refer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you will remember, one of the earlier things we did this session, and it seems like a lifetime ago, when we talked about House Joint Resolution number 1. And obviously that came up a long time ago, and that allowed us to call ourselves back into session. We passed that here, we sent it over to the Senate, and they had some concerns over there, and they responded by sending us their version of the bill, and that's what we have here before us. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about why I think it's important that we have this ability, although I could spend a lot of time on why it's important for us to be able to have that. Whether you want to argue that we are an equal branch or non-equal branch of government, we are certainly less than equal if we don't have the ability to call ourselves back in. If we're limited to only being able to function within a short period of time throughout the year, I don't see how you could even argue that we're equal. And again, there's many people in here who argue that we're not equal branches. It was never set up that way. And I understand that argument. I'm not going to get into that. But I will say that certainly we're not even equal if we can't even talk about issues for 9 months out of the year. So I think this is important for us to have this ability. And I won't spend a whole lot more time on that. But what I will do is tell you about the differences between the two and why I think this is a good path forward for us. Both of them required a 60% to get us back here. Both of them. Both of them did require a written request. In the House version, it said a joint written request. So if you think through that, how is a joint written request going to work? Well, a singular written request, meaning they're going to have a form letter that says we want to come back in, and 60% would need to sign that on both sides of the rotunda there. So, okay. What's the difference then? This one says on the written request, specifying the subjects to be considered. So that's the difference. We have to at least say why we want to come back. Is that fair? I think so. If you look at the ability for the gentleman on the second floor to call us back, similar thing, to specify a specific subject on why we would come back. This does the same, which I think is fair. So if we were called back, we called ourselves back, we had that special session, whether you call it special or extraordinary. I was asked that on committee, what's the difference? Really nothing that I could determine, even with as far as asking the AG if there was a difference on that, and his opinion was no. They're terms used interchangeably. And so if we're here and we're talking about, let's say, a school policy and something big came up and we needed to be here to do something else, what would we have to do? We would just file another written request to discuss that subject, and we could. So we could discuss other subjects. You know, it could happen how we do that, but at least going into the situation, we at least need to know what we're talking about, and that's fair. There's also one other difference that I point out. The very last lines, 28 through 30, does talk about that we're going to be limited to those specific subjects. And again, that's kind of in harmony with the way that it works when the executive branch calls us back in. So a very similar approach. I think this is a fair approach. I think it works. Again, as a reminder to this body, this is a resolution. Does not go before the gentleman on the second floor. It goes to the people for a vote there, which would happen next year to find out if they would agree with us that we should be able to have our opportunity to call ourselves back. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for your support on this.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 16.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a few thoughts on this. We're 100 days into the legislative session, and we're contemplating legislation that would bring us back. I just don't think that's appropriate. I did not sign up for this to be part of a full-time legislature, and I feel like this is putting us on the road to that if we're not already well down that road. I would like to get out of here, and I would like to not come back until next January, and I think a lot of you too would feel the same about that. So I would just ask for your red light. I'd also point out that a number of other states don't meet nearly as often as we do that are much larger than us. Texas meets every other year. North Dakota, Nevada, Montana, Utah has a 45-day limit on their legislative session. So short of some restriction to that nature, I will not be supporting the ability of the legislature to call itself back into session. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Hearing none, will the gentleman please stand and close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Really appreciate those comments there from good gentleman from 16. He actually made my point for me. If we can't call ourselves back in, are we reluctant to sine die? We're debating that right now this year. Will we sine die or not? If we know that certain monies are going to be coming in or possibly coming in that we may or may not have an opportunity to discuss. If we knew that we could call ourselves back in, I think we would be more likely to adjourn faster and easier because we know it's not off the table. Right now, the system is forcing us to be here long because of the unknown. Because of that unknown, we don't know whether or not there's going to be another crisis that arises in October, September, July, June. I don't know when. But this is the only way that we can have some assurance that we'll be able to be part of the process. If we don't have this in place, I think we're forcing ourselves to be here longer simply because it's the only way that we can ensure that we'll have a say if a crisis does arise. This also limits it to just that topic that we're talking about. I think this is a good opportunity for us to solve several problems with one go and would encourage your support on this.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question before us is, shall Senate Joint Resolution number 102 pass the House? I would remind the body that this, in order to pass this, requires 2/3 of the body or 47 votes. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes. Has every member voted they have? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and read the pairs.
Gibbs votes nay. Holtzclaw votes aye. Blanksma votes aye.
The vote count shows 54 in favor with 15 against and 1 absent. Senate Joint Resolution number 102 has passed the House and we return to the Senate.